It looks like I am on, and we are now live for Defense Academy, August 2020. This is our third installment of Defense Academy, but this will definitely be the best one that we have done so far. So welcome to Capital Factory. My name is Kevin Landtroop. I am the Vice President for Defense. Really the Vice President for Defense Innovation, Portfolio, and Partnerships, and we're going to talk a little bit about all of those things today. But let's just get right into the programming, and I will forward the slides. So, again, my name is Kevin Landtroop. I run our Defense Partnerships portfolio and programs, this being one of our programs, which creates opportunities for our portfolio to learn about the programs that they're going to have to navigate in order to win their first big Defense Innovation Award. And I'd like to especially thank our community partner, AFSA, or the Alamo AFSA down in San Antonio. AFSA, which stands for the Armed Forces Communications Electronics Association, although really it's just AFSA, the name itself has become very recognizable in this industry. They are the industry association that allows for companies that build science, technology, communications, cybersecurity, and other products like that for the defense industry. And they've been very helpful in helping us organize this content and this iteration of Defense Academy. So let me go over the agenda. So for day one, we're going to start. So the general theme of Defense Academy is we start basic and we get more advanced. But you're going to get a couple of things during this. You're going to get awareness of the different types of programs that you should be looking towards if you want to win your first, Defense Innovation Program Award. You're going to get the information about how to access those programs, and that information will start again very basic with the awareness level, and then get more specific as we dive into more advanced topics, which you'll see on the next slides. And then you're going to get relationships, and those relationships are going to be formed by interacting with each other in the chat room, as well as the networking session tomorrow afternoon, as well as the Epic Office Hours that we're going to do on Wednesday. So, but to start, today we're going to have a DoD Innovation Cell overview, and we're going to have representatives from Naval X, which is the Navy's DoD innovation, or the Navy's innovation arm that runs their various tech bridge organizations. We're going to have Will Dixon from FedTech. FedTech is an independent organization, but they run accelerators for the Army's XTech Search program, which really is the best way for a lot of different companies to break into some customer discovery within the Army. And then we're going to have Matthew Scott, who's the director of the Austin cell of AFWERX. He's going to tell you about AFWERX, AFVentures, the challenges that they're doing. And then from 12 to 1, we've got Russell Long, who's the founder and CEO of Long Capture, who is the, outside of AFWERX and AFVentures themselves, in my opinion, Long Capture is the expert on the AFWERX open topic SBIR, and that is exactly what Russ is going to talk to you guys about. And then we'll finish it up with an overview of Capital Factory presented by Josh Baer and myself. So tomorrow, broad level, we're going to have 2 other opportunities that you should be thinking about after you win your first Defense Innovation contract, kind of what's graduate level work, if you will. And really that's forming relationships and working as a subcontractor on a major effort with a traditional DoD prime vendor. And so we're going to have Sarah Brinkerhoff, who works for Accenture Federal Services in their Office of Small Business Programs, talk to you about that. And then Bill Robinson, who is not only the director of memberships for AFSA, but also runs or works inside a company called Frontier Technology, and they are really good at helping companies identify and win phase 3 contracts. And then Rick Lipsey, who's the president of Alamo AFSA, is going to talk to you about the benefits of working with an organization and through an organization like AFSA. And definitely put on your calendars for tomorrow, we're going to have a networking session in a platform called Sococo, which is a virtual workspace. We're very excited to show you guys that platform, but also for y'all to meet each other. And we're going to have a lot of our mentors joining in that space as well. And then day 3 is when we get into our advanced and technical topics. So 2 that you definitely need to be aware of. One is cybersecurity maturity model certification. Actually, Dr. Ellen Lord from the Department of Defense made an announcement this week that they are driving forward with the rollout of CMMC, and there's some new updates around that. So Chandler Hall is definitely an expert in how CMMC impacts small businesses and how small businesses need to navigate CMMC. if they want to become a DoD vendor, particularly through SBIR or STTR. And then the second component of day 3 is going to be how to get your software on a DoD network. And there's really kind of 2 pathways for that. One is FedRAMP and the other is ATO. And Chandler's going to talk to y'all about that as well. And then one of my favorite things that we do anytime we do it, Epic Office Hours. This one's going to be a defense-focused Epic Office Hours. So no investors, it's just going to be customers, and these customers are going to be from various DoD science, technology, and research programs, as well as some of the defense industry customers that you may want to connect with. The Epic Office Hours is by invitation only. So those of you who have applied and who we've made some matches for will get those invitations sometime this afternoon. And then day 4, we're going to hear from John Serafini, who's a really interesting entrepreneur who's had multiple different startups, some successful exits. Recently started a company called Hawkeye 360, which makes small sat clusters. And they have big partnerships with companies like Raytheon. They've got a lot of strategic investment from industry majors. They have a lot of private investment. And John's going to talk to you guys generally about, like, as a startup, how are you partnering with primes, raising big amounts of capital, scaling your company on government contracts, venture capital, and strategic relationships with those DoD primes. John's a really interesting guy, so you definitely want to tune in for that. And then we're going to hear from Jana Lewis, who is a strategic innovator from within the technology industry and the defense space. She's a government contracts expert. She's a licensed member of the Federal Patent Bar, and she's an expert in government technology IP. And then we're going to hear an overview of really the things that you should be thinking about if you are raising money, forming a board, and want to do business with the DoD, and that's really about the restrictions related with foreign ownership, influence, and control. So Heather Richmond, who was there at the beginning as the Trusted Capital Marketplace was built out, we were supposed to have Katie Arrington, the director of TCM, but her office had to pull her out at the very last minute due to a scheduling conflict. So, but Heather is the managing director of the Defense Investor Network and also is an expert in the Trusted Capital Marketplace and all of those issues surrounding foreign ownership, influence, and control. So why are we doing this? So at the end of year 1 of the Center for Defense Innovation for Capital Factory, which y'all will learn about later today if you stick around for the Capital Factory overview, we discovered that we had 31 companies that had been awarded over $63 million from a range of DoD innovation programs. But there were some common threads, which were a strong entry point for most companies for their first touch with the Department of Defense really was the AFWERX open topic and the SBIR program in general, although there are lots of other programs that you should also be going after, a big one being XTech Search, and you'll hear from that this morning. But the SBIR, and specifically the SBIR open topic, being a big point of entry for these companies. So we established 2 programs designed to help companies really, 1, understand how to win, 2, win, and 3, be successful performing on an SBIR AFWERX open topic project. So the Defense Academy and the specific timing of it is designed to help you understand the things that you need to do to be ready to go after an open topic, specifically in the 20.3 cycle. So one of the things that you have to have that you may not already know about is you have to be registered in the System for Award Management and you have to have a CAGE code. If you don't have those 2 things, guess what? That's okay, because we're doing this academy with enough time for you to be able to get one of those before you have to actually apply on the SBIR open topic, which the application window closes on October 22nd. And then we're also going to talk to you about an SBIR Accelerator program that we have started, which if you apply for the SBIR open topic phase 1, you should also apply for the Capital Factory SBIR Accelerator. If you win a phase 1, you can get an invitation to join our accelerator, and that's where we're going to help you connect to those customers, investment capital, and industry partners that are going to help you put together a really good phase 2 proposal at the end of that phase 1 period of performance. So that really is the kind of the why that we're doing this. So now over the next 50 minutes, you're going to hear from 3 innovators, one being Will Dixon from FedTech, another being Matt Denny from Naval X, and a third being Matthew Scott from AFWERX. But for starters, I would like to introduce and have Brian bring up Will Dixon. Will's a principal for FedTech. FedTech is an innovative organization that helps the government understand how to access DoD innovation opportunities and manage those programs, and they specifically run an accelerator for XTech Search.
Yes, awesome. Kevin, you can hear me all right? Good, yes? All right, I will go and take that as we're moving here. So nice to meet everybody, and we'll try to be pretty quick here, but first I'll give a quick FedTech intro. So FedTech, we've been around since 2015, and we have 4 kind of main programs, and this is helpful, I think, just for context of where we sit in the ecosystem, and I'll move quickly into really, you know, the nuts and bolts of the Army from our perspective here. But we run startup studios, custom accelerators, doing venture training for large orgs and tech scouting, but we're at that intersection between that deep tech, breakthrough tech, the DoD and the government as a funding and partner, and then entrepreneurship, which you'll see here. So through our startup studio, this is going from 0 to 0.5. So this is for any entrepreneur out there that's interested in start a business. What we do is we actually, you know, if anyone's familiar with studio programs, we start from scratch. We kind of run a boot camp, but we recruit solo entrepreneurs, put them into teams, and license tech from these types of organizations. So worked with 40 plus federal labs here. Have some cool anecdotes. If you see the NFL on there, some cool entrepreneurs actually that are alumni of the NFL, and another one from the NBA. And I'm 6'8". The guy was making me look tiny, but a really fun program. This is kind of our core programming at FedTech, the startup studio. Small business accelerators, and just to clarify what those are for everybody, it's accelerating the growth of an established business, filling gaps in knowledge for founders working in a particular ecosystem. And a lot of that for us is the Army and the DoD, and then the connection, right? And to me, that's doubling down on your bet. Once you find companies, work with them to get ready to pitch, to, you know, to work on their product, you know, let's get in front of the right people. So again, a few things here. You know, we like to think that we kind of, that niche is the deep tech, breakthrough technology type of startup. We work nationally, and even pre-COVID, we were operating pretty nationally. Very focused on technical founders, and then the fundraising success here. Here's some highlights from one of our previous accelerators, both in the DoD and the venture space. And this one actually has $0 of venture because we had multiple companies turn it down. You know, they were doing just fine with the DoD contracts and bootstrapping. So, you know, we try to get all those companies to a really great maturity level where they're ready to jump off with or without DoD venture type fundraising. You know, like I said, just to touch on, you know, we work with a lot of cool organizations in venture training and engaging a really diverse strategic partners network as well on behalf of the companies. But let's jump into now for the Army. And again, like Kevin said, we are not the Army. This is our perspective. We run an accelerator for probably the biggest program in the Army, the XTech Search prize competition. But at the end of the day, you know, we are FedTech. We're an independent organization. So this may or may not be exactly by the book, but we think this resonates with technical founders. So quick background on the Army. Anyone can go to army.mil and look at this, but you know, this was kind of an aha moment for me. But the Army has already, like I think other service organizations, they've defined what they want to be in 10 years, right? And that's not going to change. You know, this is a long process to come to this. So you can download the Army Vision to look at it. It all functions around this topic of multi-domain operations. And then the other thing I like to think about, you know, when you think about the Army, this is the Army's factory. You know, they don't build anything. A lot of desks, a lot of people, a lot of money, you know, a lot of deployment out in the world. But at the end of the day, they don't build any of their own projects. And now again, I like to draw analogies from the private sector. I used to work at General Motors in the innovation space. And so let's think about the Army's 10K here. If they were a giant business, well, what do they spend all that money on? You know, O&M, 40 billion, personnel, obviously that's kind of maintaining the established presence, training, all that sort of stuff. But procurement and RDT&E is probably where most of you guys are pretty interested. And really the procurement dollars for almost all businesses that have never engaged with the Army before are frankly off the table, because we found that you do have to have success engaging through the technical community and doing partnerships in the RDT&E field before going after the big, you know, multi-billion-dollar contract procurement dollars. And this is kind of just breaking it down. I'll skim through this. I try to digest some of this from what's usually a 45-minute hour presentation. And then, you know, let's break down what that RDT&E, research and development, test and evaluation. And so I'm about to start getting pretty deep into acronyms. So apologies, but all the acronyms I think are ones that we believe you need to understand if you are a small business. So, but the only reason I wanted to show this slide here is that the Army has colors of money that dictate what they can spend. So the traditional process of customer discovery where, hey, I'm going to go find someone, they like what I do, I like them as a customer. Even if you came, oh, we settled on a price, we know how much it's going to cost. If that customer doesn't have money of the correct color, the correct appropriations year, with the correct requirements in place to buy it, which is a multi-year process, and that's like where we try to add value from the FedTech perspective. But if they haven't done all that work and you haven't helped them in the beginning, they can't buy your stuff. And really, frankly, I think if that's the one takeaway from working with the DoD or government versus a traditional customer, is that there are a lot of regulations and long-term relationship management that dictates to you getting your technology and influence into a lot of different pockets of the organization. So real quick, we'll just throw up here what entities work on these problems. Army Research Lab is a big one. And I'll just say again, I'm not sure I put it on its own slide. I hope I did. But go to Army Open Campus right now. You can just Google Army Open Campus. Every technical founder, every technical company, that should be your first door in the Army from a technical perspective. You can find phone numbers, email addresses for the PIs in the Army that are working on the same problems you are. And so that's number one is, again, if just from the Army Research Lab here, to figure out if what you're doing is actually legit or that resonates, going through there. Army Engineering Centers, federal labs, program executive offices, these are the end customers for that procurement, which again should not be the first focus for anyone. Army Futures Command is a huge piece of this, and they have a cool programs we'll touch, a cool few programs we'll touch on, and then businesses. That's yourselves. And I didn't want to share, we could go spend hours talking about where the DoD and Army has all their labs, but it's out there. Google, United States Defense Laboratories and Centers, find the one that aligns with your tech or, where you are locally. Go introduce yourself. Again, that's another great first step. Second to Army Open Campus is, hey, what lab does what I'm doing? They all have small business offices. They all have phone numbers you can call to get to know them. Let's go really quickly through, and this is the acronyms, big apologies here, but traditional partnership mechanisms here for the Army. Fall into three buckets, and again, I'm kind of taking this parallel from the commercial world, right? R&D, engineering, selling, acquisition. SBIR, STTR, y'all are familiar with that, huge program. The Air Force actually has funneled all of their innovation stuff, which you hear about, I think, into really changing how the SBIR program works at a fundamental level. Broad agency announcements, again, these are things you can Google, you can look through them. They're nasty. They're 100-page documents that last for 5 years, but helpful to figure out what tech areas the Army's focused on. Cooperative research and development agreement. So that's not a financial partnership, but you can get a lot of cool work done by the Army if they have some unique expertise. Facilities you need your thing tested on. A lot of our companies we found CRADA is great in parallel with an SBIR actually. Test service agreement is another one I'll throw out there, and then even just becoming a research supplier. If Army Research Lab needs some really cool, unique glassware, and you make glassware, think about you can sell that. I like to put that on there just to sense check. There's a lot of different ways to work with the Army. They are just a big business at the end of the day. Engineering, manufacturing, initial deployment. This is kind of, hey, once you have that foot in the door. I liked how Kevin mentioned, I think you said, phase 2 or year 2 type stuff, or the grad school, But, once you have that foot in the door, OTA can be the foot in the door as well, but there's consortium-based, other transaction authorities, contracts for prototype and production, when you're already a little bit higher TRL usually. And then I put the bunny here, but just rapid funding opportunities. The Rapid Capabilities and Critical Technologies Office, Rapid Innovation Fund, and Rapid Equipping Force are all still out there in some sort of flavor. That again, if you have a higher TRL higher TRL technology and you're ready to launch that in the next year or two, some of these ones in the middle. And then FAR-based acquisition. This is pretty scary for a lot of small business. Scary for us at FedTech as we grow. But FAR-based acquisition is really long-term, heavy regulation, heavy requirements and like that. So let's talk about the new ones. The new ones, I think, are the exciting ones, but prize competitions and then combined prize competitions and follow-on funding. So XTech Search is a prize competition. If you go to xtechsearch.army.mil right now, you can stay up to date on what the open variations of that competition. They started up and going since 2018. Amazing. I think awarded over $7 million to small businesses over the past 2 years. It's open topic, but they also have some focused topic ones, which we'll mention here as well. But the prize competitions that come, I look support with business development and Army programming. That's where we at FedTech partner with the Army to support the prize competitions and run these accelerators. Very founder friendly at the end of the day. And then the combined prize competitions and follow-on funding. And so, even if I just put this back up here as a reminder, you have to do at least one pretty major competitive bidding solicitation process, which checks the box that the Army has, looked and done their research to figure out that you are the, company and the technology to work with. But once you get past that, you can go into some of the follow-on funding. So what the Army's done is some cool ways to actually combine this stuff and make it really, really rapid, stuff that usually takes 1, 2, 3 years. And another thing for XTech Search here, I have the links. I think, these slides will be, a version of these slides will be shared, but this book actually is published by the Assistant Secretary for the Army for Acquisitions, Logistics, Technology, which is also where the XTech Search prize competition is sponsored out of. And they're kind of like the civilian oversight and leadership for the Army, in parallel with everyone that's active duty. But they have this amazing book. The link is here. It's on the XTech Search website. And it's got all the stuff I just mentioned, much more in deep. Hey, what's a BAA? What's a CRADA? How do I look? And it's by the book. I'm kind of filling in here based on what we think resonates externally, but very, very important. And then the other thing in terms of a takeaway for XTech Search prize competition is to go follow them on LinkedIn. Because while, yes, you're going to learn about sam.gov, which is the formal gold source for all funding opportunities from the government, frankly, it sucks. It's really hard to follow. So, social media actually ends up being one of the bigger takeaways to follow, both on LinkedIn, Twitter, mostly, some Facebook as well. But follow all these prize competitions, all the organizations, including FedTech that you hear about. We publish new competitions and opportunities constantly, as well as highlight cool stories to demonstrate working with the government and the Army. And I think this is my last slide here, but I'll end really, where is Army innovation at in 2020? 2020 has probably been, the biggest year. I'm sure everyone will probably say you're always getting better, but I think even XTech Search has been around since 2018. But 2020 with Army Applications Lab coming into play, Army Futures Command getting some dollars, some strategy behind launching a few years ago. 2020 and 21 are set to be really groundbreaking years for Army approaching innovation and working with cool tech small businesses in really groundbreaking ways. So I mentioned XTech Search here, gated rounds of funding, prize competition. We support with the Accelerator there. Innovation Combine, I think a lot of you guys have heard about. This is the one that combined the prize competition with the follow-on actual real contract competitive bidding process. Powerful stuff from a contracting, huge innovation behind the scenes there. And we actually run a small cohort program for all the participants of the Combine as well. XTech Bolt is the first XTech competition for a specific topic. It's actually around medical, I think brain measurement or augmented human performance type things. Really cool as well, leveraging that XTech Search platform to go after a specific. And then the Army Applications Live cohort program, I believe they've only done one to date, but it shows a very, very specific topic. It's funny, they say it's not an accelerator, it's a cohort program with all the same nuts and bolts of an accelerator. But with that, I will end there. I know maybe a few minutes over 10, but hopefully valuable for everyone to get a quick juice of, again, what the Army is. You're going to hear a lot of the terms thrown around the more and more you engage with the DoD. So would encourage everyone, a few takeaways. Go to xtechsearch.army.mil and follow all the social media and bookmark that page. That is the way to stay aware of all of these things coming up. And then start doing your research with Army Open Campus, looking up your engineering center, reading broad agency announcements. If you're lucky enough for, mature enough business to have a full-time business development lead, that could easily eat up a few weeks just to go start doing that homework. And a lot of it's out there, but it is messy. So with that, I'll end. And thanks for the opportunity to share, Kevin.
Yeah, this is fantastic. And Will, please keep sharing your slides because I actually want you to go back one to the one with the 4 blocks.
This one right here?
Yeah, absolutely. That one is perfect. And I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions regarding kind of each of these programs from my observations, some of which I'm not sure if you already covered, but big question for me is, do you know, or has the Army decided yet when the next XTech cohort's going to be, which I think is 6.0?
There is no formal announcement on that as of today. But when it does get announced, the first people that will see it will anybody following the XTech Search LinkedIn page.
Okay, fantastic. Any guesses based on prior performance of when the next one might be?
Yeah, you'd expect it to get launched around like the October-ish timeframe, so sometime this fall, potentially into the new year. You know, as they expand their portfolio, there's a little bit more strategic planning being done, you know, across the broader Army versus kind of running on its own. But yeah, ideally, you know, probably stay, probably something in the next like 3 to 5 months, I would hope.
Fantastic. The next thing I want to focus on really is the two middle blocks you have there. So the Innovation Combine was, I believe, the first of its kind in that the Army's Combat Capabilities Development Command used the XTech platform, used, you know, kind of you guys to some extent to use a challenge or a prize type of competition to specifically source a technology that traced back to a funded system. So is this something that you see? One, you know, I'd like to hear kind of your perspective on how that worked. And two, do you see this being something that they use more often?
Yeah, and I think I will actually say that there was one tiny, it was called Flash to Bang, but that's for all the Army innovation historians out there. But some great innovations coming from contracting offices, from the Ground Vehicle Systems Center, who sponsored this one, as you know, as well as the other big one is ACC New Jersey. But I think to address your questions, it is the first time that they leverage the prize competition platform to do that competitive selection process, which, you know, from a fundamental standpoint, it makes sense, right? If you put it out on the internet, that's competitive. But it was the first time they used that to be competitive and then have the funded, like kind of what you alluded to there and what I said in the presentation, but, you know, doing the multi-year process to align requirements, funding sources, colors of money, budgets. You know, the Army did that up front, which makes it super, super small business friendly. And I would expect them to do more and more of this. Like from my, you know, again, you know, not formal Army perspective here, but the AAL cohort program and the Combine Prize OTA start to look and feel pretty similar when it comes to an outside perspective with, hey, this is a specific, really specific thing we already have a need for that's not addressed in the next year. And so we're going to set up a prize competition plus follow-on funding and a lot of fanfare around going to find the groundbreaking technologies for a specific topic. Whereas again, XTech Search is totally open topic.
Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic. And really one thing that the Army has done extraordinarily well, if I were to categorize like the things that each of these different innovation cells have done best, I think the Army's done an extraordinarily good job of defining specific problems that tie to systems and then using some of these programs. They're starting to get to the point where they're using some of these programs to get companies on contract to solve those problems. And again, because those problems trace directly back to a big system or program, there's a baked-in opportunity for follow-on work. And that's really what the AAL's cohort program does. And now they're starting to use SBIR topics that are specific topics, but they're not as narrow as they used to be, where they tell you how to solve the problem as well. But they're starting to use some of those SBIR topics that feed directly into future challenges as well. So I'm excited about that. So thanks, Will. I think Will's going to hang around until we get to the Q&A portion at the very end if the audience has any questions. But now I'm going to bring up Matt Denny. Let me bring up Matt's chart there. So Matt, welcome. You and I have never actually met before, but I'm really happy that you joined us today. So Matt's the Chief Marketing Officer for an organization called Naval X. Naval X is the Navy's foray into creating these innovation spaces, and they do it primarily through tech bridges. So I'd really like Matt to talk about a couple of things. One is kind of the Naval X mission and the tech bridges and how they might interface with non-traditional businesses. And then second, the Navy has started to use SBIR in a unique way, following a little bit of the Air Force model with the open topic, but also a little bit of the Army model with the slightly open but still focused topic. And I believe they call it the Tech Accelerator SBIR. So hopefully we can get Matt to talk about those two things. And welcome Mohawk to the Defense Academy.
Excited to be here. You guys can hear me okay, correctly? Correct?
Yes. Yeah, you're good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. And yes, Naval X, we are about a year and a half old. So as far as these accelerator innovation organizations exist, we are a baby. Agile mindset, kind of what we are. Navy and Marine Corps, we partner with other forms of DoD, but we serve one main core purpose, and that is to connect. A little bit different than like AFWERX, AFWERX, where they're doing a lot of in-house work themselves. NavalX, we're a very small team, and when I say small, about 10 people. And we've got some other extensions of tech bridges, which I'll talk to in a moment. But NavalX, of course, is pretty small, and we connect what's going on inside the Navy and the Marine Corps, both to each other, and importantly for today, you and your businesses to the happenings of the Navy and the Marine Corps, and us back to you. One of those ways, as Kevin talked to, is tech bridges. So tech bridges is we have 12 tech bridges. So tech bridges is technology bridge, excuse me. Technology bridge. It's that ecosystem that we've created that bridges the academia, government, and industry gap. And so I don't have slides today, so I apologize. I'm not a slide guy. I hate them, so you just have to stare at me the whole time. But tech bridges, we've got them in 12 locations right now, and there is one. We got one sitting in the Capitol in Washington D.C., and it serves about 4 bases in the area and the Pentagon. And this location is kind of open, generic. There's not an exact tech focus. Where some of the tech bridge locations, like Charleston, South Carolina, aka Palmetto Tech Bridge, is actually really focused in information technology, IT, AI, because that command that we're connected to is an IT command. And that's how tech bridges operate. Is each tech bridge location is next to or a part of a Navy or Marine Corps command. Some it may be one base, some may be multiple, depending on the area, like this one I'm in the capital region. We have 12. We've got one in Monterey, California. We've got one in Orlando, Florida, Norco, California, Norfolk, Virginia, Creighton, Indiana, Newport, Rhode Island, Keyport, Washington, Charleston, South Carolina, San Diego, California, Production River, Maryland, and Ventura, California. We've got about 4 or 5 that are about to be announced. Excuse me. You guys cannot hear me. So we're having audio issues. Hear about it. Okay. How about now? Is that audio any better? Kevin, I know the comments can be delayed a little bit. Let's see. I've got a private chat coming here. Better. Okay. New camera, new fun. So there we go. So yeah, we've got the 12 locations of our tech bridges. All of this can also be seen on our NavalX website. And I'll put the links. I think I can add comments. But you just Google NavalX, you'll find it. We're the only one. Those tech bridges, what does it mean to you? And the value really is you now have a better way to do business with the Navy and the Marine Corps. Not that the other ways are bad, but that is our job. That is our role, is to connect with you. We have teams dedicated to understanding what you do, what your businesses are, and how we can funnel that into the Navy and the Marine Corps environment and world. And we're teaching on both sides. Making sure my sound's not off. We're teaching on the government side, teaching government. There's different ways to get information from with industry, and we're teaching industry, especially the small businesses. Hey, you don't know how to apply for an OT, you don't know how to apply for an SBIR, or how to get in contact with the government. We're about to start having classes come out that teach that. Something that we kind of learned from Amazon. Someone going to a job hire at Amazon, where they actually train you how to write a resume. We took that model and we're working to apply it here in the Navy and the Marine Corps, or at least with Naval X, so that if there's anyone out there, hey, I want to do business with the Navy, I don't know how, great, reach out to us. We have some courses coming out really focused on bridging those gaps and what those problems are and how And I don't mean problems to solve. We have those too, but really the problems of working together. It can be kind of a complicated process at times, working from government to industry, industry to government, and NavalX exists to bridge those gaps. We are not working on a lot of the problems ourselves. Something unique to the Navy and the Marine Corps, or at least different than I know the Air Force, like AFWERX and SOFWERX, in the Special Ops community, is that we have warfare centers and labs that are dedicated to these innovation things. They are focusing on these things daily. So that is who we do to. That is who we help you partner with. Them partner you. One of the new ways we're doing that is called the NavalX Connect tool, something that just launched a couple weeks ago. It's in beta, so if it doesn't work, reach out to me. We'll get it fixed. But it's actually www. It's not that. It's https://navalx.navy.mil/industry. And that is the way that you can go in and enter your company's information, what you do, what you're trying to do with the government, what your technology focus area is. And then we have that CRM, that database of, hey, okay, next time somebody comes to us from the government side, say, hey, NavalX, we don't know who to work with. We need help with radar. And there's like 100 radar companies. Who do we find? We've got the go-to list, and we're creating it so that they can access it as well, so that we have access to you as partners. One of the things that we do at Tech Bridge is so there's something not ready to announce yet, coming up in the line. Challenge coming that Shark style, where different people can come and pitch. If any of you participate in these, like AFWERX holds them. Other organizations hold these. We're creating those as well. We're working to help our partners in the government create them. Again, NavalX, we don't have money ourselves. We're helping you connect to the folks that do. I think Kevin's got a question for me. You ready to talk, Kevin? I'll pause just so I don't go too far. Make sure you hit what you want to hit.
Yeah, great. Hey, thanks, Matt. So we did have a little bit of choppiness. So I just kind of want to focus in on a couple of issues really that would be relevant to this audience. Sure. So you mentioned that, NavalX is not specifically organized to source technology solutions to a range of Navy problems, but you have other organizations that are working on that. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to see if I can get you to highlight just a couple of ways. So the audience here are primarily startups that either have worked with the government in a very limited capacity or maybe have never received a DoD contract at all. Some of these companies may not even have a cage code yet. So like I'm that company, and really this program is designed to help them get set up to apply. We time it to feed into the SBIR 20.3 cycle, but really it's a range of programs. So if I were a company and I wanted to work and deliver my solution to the Navy, fitting that profile, what are one or two things that you would suggest that they do?
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Kevin. The one thing is the first best thing is go to that tool I just spoke of and enter their information. That is at the navalx.navy.mil/industry. And it's a new way for us to collect all that information. So we're not getting all these emails to 12 different people on the team. And that is, we have people sourcing that to say, okay, here's the new technologies, here's the new companies interested in partnering. And then biggest thing is contacting us. We've been tasked to do from O&R Office of Naval Research is help these companies apply. So if you're in that application state and you're like, hey, I want to look, but I don't know, is this what the Navy's looking for? Are the words right? Kind of like you guys are helping them set up in your areas. We are creating classes, which may have broken up in the beginning, that are teaching folks how to apply for SBIRs, how to bring up OTAs and PIA partner intermediate agreements to have those other vehicles available, and kind of teach industry folks like you have today how to do that with the Navy and Marine Corps.
Cool. And I also wanted to make sure that I heard you correctly. So for the comments, I believe I just posted the tool into the chat link on the YouTube stream. However, the link didn't work for me. because I'm not on Internet Explorer, and I got the standard Google. This website is not secure, which I always find interesting that Google's telling me that the government websites are the ones that are not secure, but it's just the tools aren't talking to each other correctly. So I thought you also mentioned something about there might be some kind of a challenge or a pitch competition upcoming.
Yes.
Is there anything you can tell us about that? Like where to go look for it?
So there's a couple things. There's one that is shared right now. You can find it through like the NavalX LinkedIn, or it's on the NavalX website, which is secnav.navy.mil/agility, or you can Google NavalX, and it'll be the first site that comes up in the Google search. And it's called the AI Challenge. So all things AI related, there is a prize challenge related to that going on currently. And there is another prize challenge. I can't announce the topic because they are defining it still, but it'll be probably announced in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And the challenge itself is going to occur in the winter timeframe. But so the way to stay in tune with what we have going on and those challenges, the best way to keep up is LinkedIn. That is where we are putting the most current up-to-date information, and also our website.
So if I heard that correctly, because you did crackle a little bit, follow NavalX on LinkedIn, and you'll get all those reminders and announcements.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. We'll post some of those links in the chat here shortly. Matt, thanks so much for coming on. If you wouldn't mind, I'd love for you to hang around a little bit until we get to the end of the Q&A in case we have additional questions. But next, I would like to bring up Matthew Scott. Matthew's the Austin Innovation Lead for AFWERX. He's going to talk to us about AFWERX kind of at a broad level and some of the things that they have going on. Probably most of the folks on this stream are familiar with AFWERX. But you may not be familiar with Matthew. Matthew's been here in Austin, heck, longer than me. I think going on 3 years working as the lead for AFWERX. You've been through the launch of the first challenge, which was PTN, if I recall correctly. And now we're into AFWERX 2.0, which may or may not be really out there on the street yet. You're probably going to hear some more about that in the next coming weeks. But Matthew's been here in Austin at Capital Factory for a good while, and a good friend of Capital Factory, a good friend of mine, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Kevin. Yes, I'm Matthew Scott. I'm originally from Austin, born and raised here. And then I came back here after I transitioned out of the military, and then stood up the AFWERX Austin hub in Capital as a partnership with Capital Factory inside, and been working initiatives. While I'll talk, our main web page that's a sort of access the front door for AFWERX is afworks.af.mil. That's afworks.af.mil. We're sort of using that as a one-stop location to find ways to engage with AFWERX. When we originally started 3 years ago, AFWERX was an initiative of basically the coalition of the willing. What we mean by that, there was a group of individuals that came together that were a fusion of capabilities, and we were tasked to act as a catalyst to connect DoD owners of problems or pain points and connect them to academia and the private sector. So that's what mostly we concentrate on our first 2.5 years of business, is facilitating that exchange of information and of acquiring and transitioning that technology. And we've done it through mainly 3 hub locations, one in DC, Vegas, and Austin. Each hub has their own little I would say capability that they're going after. And for Austin, we have been heavily involved, which you may have heard as SBIR. So as AFWERX initially started, we were doing an experiment of of facilitation, but then we also had an internal experiment where a group of us said, hey, is there a way to leverage the SBIR program within the Air Force to go after non-traditionalists? of small businesses. But when small businesses was defined in Congress in 1980s, it's less than 500 people. Well, there's a lot of businesses that I really wouldn't call small business in the modern sense that is less than 500 people, but very effective businesses. Well, you all qualify under the SBIR. So we asked the Air Force, hey, could we experiment with a portion of that allocation? And that's what we have done for the past 2 years, where we were used to getting 50 or 70 proposals per year. Now we're generating probably 1,000 proposals 3 times a year. So that is how we have grown that program. And we have grown it to where within that SBIR program, the pinnacle is recurring revenue over 4 years in these strategic financing awards, and then even follow on sustainment dollars. So we've been highly successful in the last 2 years. But as Kevin mentioned, this AFWERX 2.0, what exactly is this? Well, in the last 2 months, AFWERX has gone under a reorg to make it more of a permanent fixture within the Air Force. Air Force is embracing us as ostensibly as a front door for people to talk to. That's not saying that there's other innovation groups, but this is the best way to interact with the Air Force, because we can definitely connect you with the other innovation groups that's outside of AFWERX, but at least you have one place to go to. And what that means is our capabilities have now, what the SBIR program has been spun off into its own business line called AFVentures. And SBIR is now actually part of that portfolio of AFVentures, where they actually control money. So the SBIR budget is now controlled by AFVentures, and they're able to do what's called an 80-20 split, which is 80% open topic, which you have all been familiar with since 18.2. And that's a dual use technologies that you're bringing us your ideas and use cases, and we're trying to match you up with DoD stakeholders. And then 20% is more of the conventional requirements driven SBIR throughout the year. And what we want to do with that program starting in 20.3, where if you go to the webpage and you go under for the private sector under SBIR topics, you will see it says next application period is scheduled for 23 to October 22nd. That is the next round of SBIR and growing out that. So we want to be very transparent in the future. We're going to have a steady state known dates of 3 times per year that we do these applications. All these applications will be tied with, starting with 20.3, you'll have identified 8 technology areas that you can identify with. And then with each of those technology areas internally, we have focus areas that map to those technology areas that are backed by individuals with sustainment dollars at the end of this program, if it works, that we can tie it to the acquisition system. So that's our whole goal, is transition. Also, we're growing out our STTR. And think of that as a small business partnered with a university or a nonprofit, where the business does at least 40% of the work, and the academia or the nonprofit does at least 30% of the work. That program, up until this month, had been only receiving about 50 proposals, so well underserved. We had tons of budget. And for the first time this round, it closed and it jumped up over 300 proposals, which is great, because now we're growing that program. And what a huge catalyst of that, and what AFWERX 2.0 allows us to do, is tie in a lot of capabilities, meaning big initiatives like Agility Prime. We're able to partner with SBIR and STTR to really champion some focuses in particular iterations. Also on the website, you'll go for industry. If you go to challenges, AFWERX Challenges, which is mostly run out of the AFWERX Vegas hub, sponsors where DoD stakeholders with sustainment dollars come to them and say, hey, we want to go after this particular technology within this challenge, and they will help facilitate that. And that's real money, and there is no requirement for a small business. That can be any size business. So those are our two main pipelines. In the next year, starting with 20.3, is what we're looking to tie those two together. So one of the first programs that we'll try and tie those two together is the Energy Challenge that will launch in September out of Las Vegas for AFWERX Challenge Energy. And that will also be a focus area in SBIR for 20.3. And then we're also planning to partner with STTR in 21.2. And the idea is that over a year of strategy, we can help facilitate interactions and get the market going for the energy, so we can hopefully get sustainment dollars in a year to 2 years where they're coming for big projects. And so that's what really AFWERX 2.0 about, is the scaling and making it more of a permanent fixture within the Air Force on that. And that's all I have, Kevin.
Fantastic. So Matthew, we're going to have somebody come up in a little bit and talk really, deep dive on what is the SBIR open topic that F Ventures runs, how to apply, what wins, what doesn't. But I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the STTR open topic. So how does that work? How does the Air Force envision using that, and what are the technology topics that you're looking at, and really how open is it?
Yeah, so it's completely open by statute. And what I mean by that is you can apply. There is no restrictions. Even if we state, hey, these are some focus areas for STTR, you can still apply. So for instance, on 20.D, which was a partnership with Agility Prime, and the use case was flying cars, but there's other applicability to Agility Prime. That was the main focus for 20.D, but technically anyone can apply to that topic. And what we're currently working on is every iteration, we're going to have a partner. So I do know, for instance, AI, digital engineering, energy will be future partners for those iterations. We're saying, hey, energy is coming to this partnership. They have partners in dollars that on the back end of this program have sustainment dollars. But you can also apply to some general as a general openness to apply. And if selected, we'll do our best to try and match you up, but you're going to have to really roll up your sleeves to find some of those connections so you can help find sustainment dollars. So what we're trying to really do over this next year is identify that back end sustainment recurring revenue that you all seek when interacting with us. And those will be generally the main focus DoD stakeholder that will be partnered on these.
Okay, fantastic. So if I'm understanding this correctly, so like for an STTR open topic, you still need to have a stakeholder the same way you would find one in a phase 1 period of performance for an open topic SBIR. Are those stakeholders going to be inside Air Force Research Lab on more research efforts, or do they need to be tied to these big challenge programs like Agility Prime or this Energy Challenge, or both, or is it something different? I just want to make sure that I fully understand.
No, thank you. Yeah, so for both SBIR and STTR, phase 1, the way we use that is still a business development. So there is no requirement to have a stakeholder. However, if you've already identified a stakeholder, by all means, you want to communicate that in your phase 1 proposal, because if it's a known focus area or a known interest where we're tracking the DoD stakeholder and you identify with that stakeholder, that will just better your odds of being accepted for the phase 1 program. The crux of the phase 2, which you're hitting at, is you need how we differ from Navy and all the other services is in our SBIR program for phase 2, we require MOU. And this is one of the source of confusion when you hear SBIR between conventional, the Navy, Army, and then Air Force. The Air Force is the one that mandates an MOU for the phase 2, because that MOU will be the guiding document that brings all the players together, the commercial technology, the transition partners, the DoD stakeholders, all together on one plan and articulate, hey, this is the plan that we want to go for phase 2. This is our plan for transitioning on the back end if we are successful. And these are the committed funds potentially that we can go for to make this happen. And that MOU on both STTR and SBIR for phase 2 and directive phase 2s that we use as the foundation for evaluation.
Awesome. So thanks, Matthew. So we're going to bring up our other 2 panelists real quick because we got a couple of questions that I want to get to. One from Matt, Matt Denny, who has remedied microphone issues. So I'd like for you, if you can, to speak a little bit to the Navy's Tech Accelerator SBIR topics. Specifically, will there be Tech Accelerator SBIR topics on this next cycle, the 20.3, which should be pre-announced next week?
Yeah, so that pre-release, that link that got put in the comments there, that pre-release is August 23rd. And the Navy technology acceleration topics are simpler, faster, impactful, flexible, and decisive. And what that means is simpler, cuts proposal requirements by 75%. It's from 25 to 5. It's really cutting down that both preparation time and review time. Faster, it's accelerating evaluation, selection, payments. So we're hoping to that by 2/3. So hopefully getting to you quicker. Impactful, enables wider range of concepts. So it's spreading that out. Flexible, matches the pace, and decisive in-person demonstration. So you'll be able to do that phase 1 and same day phase 2 award, hopefully in that same day. And on that flexible part as well, the goal is to awards in 3 days, which many of you know that's quicker than before. I did put a link.
Yeah, that's super fast. That's super fast. So companies I meet with, depending on what week it is, low end 5, high end 15 or 20 companies every week. And they almost all ask me the same question, which is which opportunity should I be going after? And so what I'm telling them now is, especially going into September, when the next SBIR cycle opens up, is apply to the AFWERX open topic. It really doesn't matter what your technology is, as long as it fits one of those focus areas, which are pretty broad. You've got a decent shot, and it's a great point of entry. I'm now telling them, look to the Naval X. Which is, you definitely should apply for an XTech Search cohort. It's wide open, and it's a great way to get seen by a lot of customers. So one of the questions we had, Will, was, could you provide some additional insight on how XTech proposals are vetted, how they're accepted, and kind of what are they looking for? And I'm not sure I don't recall if you described the cohort process and how the down selects happen.
Yeah, great question. So the XTech Search, it's gated, and I had it up. If you go to xtechsearch.army.mil and you click on the tab that says XTech Search, it's got a breakdown of the different judging phases. But at every phase, you get down selected with 3 to sometimes 500 or 600 applications, white papers coming in. After that, the top 60 are invited to kind of pitch virtual now, but pitch their technologies. They get broken down then to the next 20-ish that will then get invited to pitch in a more elaborate setting that's actually public versus a private. The round 2 is private. And then from those 20, they'll get down selected to the 10 or up to 12. And those are the ones that go through our formal accelerator program. They have 6 months to do a demo, and you get to the higher levels of funding at the $120K per company when you become a finalist. But at each level, and I think this is one of the coolest things, like from an outsider, and we used to work at GM and trying to figure out how to wrangle the ad hoc time of thousands of people. The Army's figured that out, because at each stage of judging, it's all Army personnel, Army Research Lab, acquisition folks, the user community, leadership, ASOL, the policymakers, really every flavor of the types of people within the Army show up to judge at every area of the competition. And that's even a thing. So for people that don't win, it's still a pretty good exposure opportunity, because a lot of times they're going to follow up. You're going to get some feedback on, hey, painted green, not black, simple stuff like that. But even the judging process itself is a pretty good customer discovery exercise.
Well, that's fantastic that you get that feedback. So that's the end of time for our first session. So for our audience, really, this was intended to be a broad, really Wavetops overview. Each of these programs are can get a little bit specific. We're going to hear in 10 minutes a deep dive on the SBIR AFWERX open topic from AFVentures. I've invited, and I want to extend the invitation and remind each of these gentlemen. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a networking session in Skoko. I certainly would appreciate it if y'all or somebody from your organizations would pop in for that. And we have representation from each of your organizations participating in the Epic Office Hours at the end of day 3. So I want to thank Matthew, Mohawk, and Will for showing up today and explaining your various agencies at a high level to our cohort. And we look forward to seeing y'all again. And for the Academy class, we are now on a 10-minute break, and we'll see you at 12:10.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks.
All right, and welcome back. It is 12:10, and we're moving into the second block of the day, which is a deep dive on the AFWERX open topic SBIR, presented by Russell Long. So Russ, Brian, go ahead and bring him up. There he is, the man with the perfect hair to match. So Russ, Air Force Academy graduate, spent just I think a little under 6 years as an Air Force contracting officer, finished up with a warrant right up to the $5 million mark, working at Space and Missile Systems, and just a little under 3 years ago started a company called Long Capture. Long Capture, as I mentioned before, you know, I would say that the AFVentures guys are experts on the AFWERX open topic. Russ actually might know more, and so we developed a friendship with Russ and his company about a year ago, and have done some really interesting partnerships with them. If you wants to capture, quite frankly, an AFWERX open topic SBIR, you could do a lot worse than to have one of Russell's consultants working with you. And most likely, a lot of the folks on our audience have either met with one of Russell's team or are currently working with one of Russell's team. So, Russ, I'm going to give you the stage, and let's help our companies learn some more about going after the 20.3 open topic SBIR.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kevin. How's my audio sound?
Great.
Good. Okay, I hopped off, so let me know. All right, so I mean, I appreciate the very warm welcome. Thanks, Kevin and Brian and Capital Factory. Very cool event to jump in and play a small part in. So I will jump right in. We'll talk through some of the specifics of the SBIR program. I'll say, you know, the Air Force Ventures, it's always great to hear from them and get their perspective, because again, they're sitting on the other side of that table, bring a lot of that perspective to these conversations. And then where we come in is we've worked with nearly 200 companies at this point, many of which, you know, we've taken through this program, this SBIR and AFWERX program. So we can give you the perspective on the industry side and what it's like to, you know, put in proposals, what we've seen be successful, different tips and tricks for, you know, putting in proposals. So that's what we're going to hit on a little bit today. So again, my perspective, my team, what we concentrate on, we work with all these tech startups and small businesses to bring them in and start working with the Air Force. The reason we like this program so much is it's really opened up the door, made it a lot easier. Still some challenges, but a lot easier than it has been historically to start working with the Air Force, find those customers, and get to what we'll talk about a little bit, those phase 3 contracts. So again, that's where my perspective and comes from. So let's jump right in. So if I can get to the next slide, that is. Here we go. Fancy. Okay. So what I want to hit on right here, quick overview of SBIR program as a whole. Again, to compare it to what's going on with the AFWERX program specifically. My goal here is to talk maybe 30, 40 minutes and then open it up to questions, comments, get into maybe some specific scenarios or questions that you all have. So leave a little bit of time at the end. But overall, what I want to emphasize here, we'll run through the 3 phases and talk about how AFWERX and this open topic are doing things a bit differently. So again, there's something like 11 different agencies that use the SBIR program. Basically, they pull money aside through the SBIR topics, they issue contracts and grants, and they all follow the same 3-phased program. Phase 1 is typically around establishing technical merit and feasibility of your solution, as well as determining commercial potential. Phase 2 is where you get more into the prototyping phase with the customer, actually building it out, doing some field tests, and then from there, once that's complete, move to what they call phase 3. So what I want to talk about here is phase 3 is really a misnomer. I think it's one of the most confusing parts about the program, because most companies think you have to go, you know, in numerical order. You have to go phase 1, phase 2, then phase 3, and that is just not the case. So as soon as you win a phase 1 contract, the day you win that phase 1, you are eligible for these sole source contracts. So phase 3, all that means is that it's someone else's money. It is not in this big pot of money that is SBIR that's been set aside for the SBIR program. So there's, billions upon billions of dollars out there in other programs, different colors of money like research and development versus operations and maintenance money. So there's all these different flavors, colors of money, different programs out there. All of phase 3 is funded. It's a contract, any kind of contract vehicle funded by these other sources. So day one, and again, the reason AFWERX program has made this so interesting is it used to take years to go through this, 3-phase program. You come in with a good idea, start working through it, and that phase 1 could take up to a year or even longer, especially when you consider the proposal period that came before that phase 1. Then another year to 2 years to go through the phase 2, start prototyping, and at this stage, many companies still weren't ready to commercialize, weren't ready to sell. They're at a lower technology readiness level, TRL, maybe 4 or 5, when they need to be in like 8 or 9 to really start selling under like this phase 3 contract vehicle. So what AFWERX has done is really sped up the timelines of the proposals to get those in, to get awarded those phase 1s. They really crunched down that phase 1 timeline and accelerated how quickly companies are moving to phase 2. And because of the nature of the topics, which we'll get into here in a minute, it's been a lot more friendly to companies, commercial companies that are moving faster, that have more developed commercial solutions that might need to tweak or just do a little bit of research and development to tailor their solution to the Air Force or Department of Defense. So it allows companies to move much quicker and really opens up this door that's been there this whole time to jump directly to a sole source, this phase 3 contract. And again, I don't want to lose too many people. We'll jump into comments later. So really quick, when I keep saying sole source, all I want to say is it's a really big deal. If you've been working with the government at all, you'll know there's thousands of regulations called the Federal Acquisition Regulations, the FAR, that all dictate and tell you how you need to go and do competitive acquisitions, competitive procedures, trying to compete against 10 to 15 people on a single acquisition. The way this program's been designed and the policy that goes into it, it's really opened up the door, just a huge benefit to help grow and scale small businesses. And it's actually authorized by law to go and do a phase 3 sole source contract. So we get away from all these awful, lengthy, competitive procedures, and it really opens up the door for any federal customer. So you win it with the Air Force under this phase 1. You can go to Department of Homeland Security or NASA or any of these other federal agencies and sell on that sole source basis. Because obviously you can continue with the Air Force, but it just really opens up the door. So all that to say, kind of tying it in a little bit to the AFWERX program. Next piece, because with the changes to the program, we're seeing a lot more venture capital backed companies go and apply. So I do want to hit on eligibility, because the conversation when we're bringing on clients, when we're talking to people that are interested in this program, it comes up all the time. So number one, less than 500 employees to be eligible. And 2, you must be U.S. owned, so more than 50% owned by a U.S. citizen and primarily operated within the United States. And on that note, like when you actually win these SBIR-funded contracts, the work, both yourself and anything that you subcontract out, must be performed in the United States. Now, what we've yet to see, we'll be looking forward again in this next round, is there is an exception where if you're owned by multiple venture capital companies, you can still apply. So maybe you're owned by multiple large venture capital companies, or even if they're small, if you're owned by multiple, more than 50%, currently in the Air Force, you're ineligible. You can still go and apply places like National Science Foundation, National Institute of Health. They use the exception that allows them to award to some companies that are owned by multiple venture capital companies. But again, this is where a lot of companies have confusion. Maybe we can get into some specific questions at the end, then if you're concerned about it. All I'll say is you want to add up individuals that are U.S. citizens that have part ownership, small businesses, or maybe a parent company if they qualify as a small business, that can go towards this 50% that we're looking for to qualify you as being eligible for this program. All right. So let's talk specifically about the open topic. So I'm going to run through from the very beginning. What we're about to see is what's called the pre-release through phase 1 and phase 2, and then kind of talk about how that leads to phase 3s, and hit on just briefly other transaction authorities. That's a whole different soapbox for either in the questions later or just another talk completely. So what we're about to see, August 25th, next Tuesday, the pre-release opens up. And so what we expect to see, what we're hearing from, Air Force Ventures team is that we will have another open topic. So again, wide open, any small business can apply. That pre-release period is a holdover. It's really for most of the other programs, other agencies that are still running SBIRs. So on the more traditional programs, you use that 30-day pre-release period to go and talk to the technical point of contact, learn more about the specific problem that's written up and posted, the specific topic. With AFWERX, it's really just more time to prepare your proposal. 30 days after that, the solicitation will open, and then from that date, I think it's like the 22nd of September through 22 October is when you can actually turn in your proposal. Please don't wait till the last day. The website is awful and often crashes, or they have all kinds of problems. So a week or so in advance before the deadline, do your submissions then. What we've seen in the past, again, always subject to change. What we'll see it in black and white when the pre-release comes out next week. But again, I'm going to be sharing what we've seen the last 4, 5, 6 rounds that we've participated in. So always subject to change. They continue to tweak, try out new things. So I'm caveating what I'm saying as this is what we've seen in the past. I think it's a solid foundation to use and have that context moving forward, but it could change. Now, phase 1 has been a 5-page, 15-slide proposal. Before you go and submit, you have to register in at least 4 different government websites. We'll get to that in a minute. We have a guide to walk you through that. But just be prepared. It's not just you go and submit a proposal somewhere. You got to go through these different websites. You also have to know that there's a big, that pre-release is 50, 60 pages. There's the Department of Defense piece. Then there's the Air Force supplement, which talks about their specific programs. There's a lot of stuff to look through, a lot of specific sections that you need to include in your proposal in those 5 pages, a lot of different sections you have to hit, a lot of different information that they're looking for. All that to say, that is what you do to build your 5-page, 15-slide proposal. You want to be thinking about how or who in the Air Force, if you win this phase 1, who do you think you're going to go talk to? What is the problem that you think you can solve for the Air Force? Who is the end user? So the boots on the ground, the people that are actually going to use the technology. Who's the customer? Customer is who's going to pay for it later on. So if we want to do a large acquisition, $5, $10, $50 million, whatever it might be, the customer, and in the Air Force's case, a program office, and usually that's going to pay for, like an enterprise solution or a large purchase. So all those different pieces you need to be thinking about. There's different sections where you talk about those in your 5-page proposal. So you put it in. Let's say that you are selected. Congratulations. How's the phase 1 work? So the phase 1 has historically been 3 months of customer discovery. So the focus is really like, I have this technology. Who is going to use it? Who is interested in it? Again, who's going to pay for it? If it does gain traction down the road, what changes do you need to make? And this is something heard Matthew Scott hit on previously. You have to get something called a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU. Sounds really complicated. It's basically you find a customer that says, hey, I'm interested in this technology. I don't have to pay anything for it because the SBIR program is. But I want to work with this company, coordinate with them during a phase 2 to see about what changes need to happen, maybe starting to integrate with some of their current systems, But really just that MOU, it comes down to finding that customer and building out basically your scope of work, what you're going to do, what those different milestones are, and what you're going to deliver to the government, when you're going to get paid. All those details you're figuring out during the course of your phase 1 contract. Getting that document approved and signed by your customer, and that rolls into your phase 2 proposal. Now, questions that I get here pretty often are how the payment schedule work. So I'll jump into that really quick. For phase 1, total dollar amount is $50,000. My recommendation is that you get pretty much to the $50,000 even in your proposal, and justify how you're going to do that: labor hours, travel, all those different, well, hypothetically travel, we'll see. But all those different items of what you're going to do during that phase 1. Do not go over $50,000. If you go even 1 cent over, you could be thrown out. If you submit more than 5 pages, if they've asked for 5 pages, you could be thrown out. Same thing on the slides. So again, be very careful when you're building your proposal to follow those details. But let's say you're awarded, you get the full $50,000. What typically happens is about $30,000 of that you can invoice for right away in the god-awful wide area workflow government invoicing system. I think Air Force Ventures has thankfully done some sort of drug deal with DFAS, the accounting folks, to pay their contractors in about 15 days rather than the normal 30. But you'll be invoicing pretty much right off the bat as soon as you get that contract for $30,000, be paid in 15 days, maybe up to 30 days at the most. So Kevin, let me come back to your question in a little bit, and as well as some of the comments. And then towards the end of that phase 1, you'll be able to invoice for the remaining $20,000. Again, this is varied. It's been more upfront, it's been less, but that's typically the schedule that we've seen in this program. Now, we've gone to the 3 months. Around that 2 to 3 month mark is when you're turning in, a final report of basically what you've accomplished and done during phase 1. And then the phase 2 solicitation comes out. So this one is more robust of a proposal, 15 pages. A lot more information goes into your cost volume, where you're justifying typically around $750,000. We've seen these phase 2s, they vary round by round, anywhere from $500,000 up to $1.5 million, and a little bit higher in certain rare cases. You're going to be pulling in that MOU, that customer that signed, talk about what you learned and what the specific problem is, and make that strong case for your phase 2 proposal. Typically, it's anywhere from 1 to 2 years for the period of performance. And again, typically around $750,000 for that award. So again, you've worked with the customer to figure out those milestones and those deliverables in the phase 2, and so you're working with the Air Force customer directly. And again, it's funded by the SBIR pot of money, which is great. These warfighters, the boots on the ground, they don't have budgets to buy or work with companies. So being able to leverage these SBIR funds has been huge, a huge change that AFWERX has helped make happen. Again, so phase 3. So at any time you can jump to a phase 3. So if you're talking to that customer, money bags, they have funding, they actually want to spend it on you, they can. As soon as you have that phase 1 contract in hand, and the new, I think it's law or policy directive, you now get those rights for 20 years. The SBIR data rights, the sole source ability. So a very big window for companies to leverage this program. So at any time you win that phase 1 award, you can jump to that phase 3. So something to consider. Other transactions, a whole can of worms I don't really want to get into. I'm going to try and boil it down to something very simple, which is all it means is that instead of writing a very complex contract with dozens and dozens of what's called FAR clauses, terms and conditions that are pulled from, again, thousands of pages of regulations on how to do acquisitions, it's crazy and obnoxious. They can do other transactions which look a lot more like, if you and I were doing business, what a typical commercial agreement would look like. So leaving out some of those crazy terms and conditions and all that junk that goes into a normal contract. So what we've seen so far is mostly on phase 2s, instead of awarding a contract, they've awarded this agreement, especially in the cases previously where there's been investor matching. I'll talk about that very briefly in a second. But in those cases, they've done these agreements rather than contracts. Right now, they kind of look and smell just like a contract, nothing totally different, but there is a lot of potential flexibility there in the future. And you can always jump to an OTA after winning a phase 1 as well. So, final point, as you're going through all this phase 1, phase 2 work, you should always be looking for that transition partner, that customer, the end user that will transition you to that phase 3. Again, there's no contract ceiling on those phase 3s. It could be, a few, $15,000. It could be $50 million. And again, a lot of different contract types that we've seen in those phase 3s. So be always hustling and looking for that transition partner and customer to do that big win with later on. All right. So real quick note, just want to make you aware that on the phase 2, there's several different programs out there beyond that initial $750,000 award. So again, just something to be on the lookout for. You can get something that's called a sequential award. It's basically just a second phase 2 award. We haven't really seen AFWERX leverage this yet, but again, they've only been around for 2 years, so we're finally getting to that point where they could. They have some companies coming to the end of their phase 2 that could cut a second one. They've recently started talking about TACFI, tactical financing. Not a whole lot of details out there yet, but again, something to be on the lookout for. Talking about another $750,000 to help with this phase 2 to phase 3 transition. And finally, strategic financing, StratFi. Sounds like we'll probably see that program again this year. And minimum of a $6 million contract funding from the government. Last year, there was like a matching program where you had to either have pre-sales or investor matching of $6 million, have $3 million from a government customer, like we were talking about, and then AFWERX would match $3 million. So 3 from government customer, some of the Air Force or Army or whoever, federally, and then $3 million from the SBIR pot of money, and then again matching this like greater $6 million that was out there that shows a lot of commercial traction. So they did some really big awards earlier this year in the spring through this program. I think they were around $24 to $30 million each. So some really big, huge growth opportunities there. Oh, I will go back. One thing I will say here is previously going into phase 2, there was a matching program. Purely my opinion, sitting on the outside, I think there's some legal pushback or issues on it. So going into your phase 2, writing that proposal, it used to be really important to have investment matching or have a government customer putting up even a little bit of money would make you more competitive for a phase 2 award. That program has basically gone away, and there's some. The reason it's called matching is it unlocks some additional funding. So maybe if you had none of this matching, you could go after $750,000 for your phase 2. But if you did have matching, then maybe you could go after up to $1.5 million in some cases. So this whole matching program, I don't think that we'll see it in the future. But with that being said, some of the core pieces they were getting at, which is strong commercialization, having good revenues and sales, having outside investment, having funding from a government customer, so getting a phase 3 now, makes you a lot more competitive. It shows that you have that traction, either commercially or within the government or both. So again, still having some of those pieces is really important for your phase 2 proposal. However, I don't think we'll see actual matching that unlock like higher award amounts in this next round. But we'll see. Fingers crossed. All right. So you will have, this may have already been sent out by Kevin and team. The main thing here, let's see if I don't blow everything up. But we have a guidebook. I talked about there's a bunch of different websites that are awful government websites to go through and register before you can even submit your proposal. So get started on that now, especially sam.gov. SAM, it could take you 2 or 3 days, or it could take 2 months. It gets really backed up in different proposal rounds, or I don't know, there's just different fluctuations. So get started right now to make sure you have it in place by the October 22nd proposal deadline. The other thing I want you guys to be aware of is it's really frustrating and unfortunate, but when you register for these sites, you will get a lot of spam phone calls and emails that are basically impersonating government folks saying like, oh, you need to do X for this registration, or you need to pay me money to do this. All that is garbage. If anyone's asking you for money or information via email, it's a scam. Unfortunately, we see it all the time. So I'll get off my soapbox there. But again, this guy will be out there for you guys to use to go and register. Okay, they still look good. I'm going to hit on, okay, thanks, Kevin. Couple different tips for putting in strong proposals, and then we'll go to questions. So what I like to talk about is instructions versus evaluation criteria. I don't know why the government does it. I did it all the time when I was a contracting officer. It's just the way they do business. But they will have instructions, their solicitation, that says you need to have these 10 mandatory sections, talking about key personnel, other ongoing work, commercialization. There's all these required sections, and they don't necessarily line up with what they are evaluating your proposal on. So what's key to understand is there's evaluation criteria, which you need to look at within the solicitation. And then there's the actual instructions and all this formatting and crap that you have to do. So keep in mind when you're writing these mandatory sections that they're not actually, you know, section 1 isn't actually directly tied to the evaluation criteria, but you want to keep that criteria in mind because, again, that's how they're going to evaluate your proposal. So hit those mandatory sections, make sure you're compliant so they don't throw out your proposal, but make sure and talk to those different evaluation criteria. Let's see, anything else? Again, page count, don't want to blow that. And yeah, I think that's all in here. Okay, AFWERX program specifically, again, this is what we've seen be successful. I don't know if they're still on. They might throw stones at me for saying this, but this is what we've seen be successful. Where I spend most of my time with my clients is that they get way too technical, way too quickly. What you need to understand about the evaluators, especially on the AFWERX program, is that they are not technical experts in your field. They may be pilots, they could be program managers, civil engineers, all kinds of different career fields helping to evaluate these proposals. But they may be looking at stuff about quantum mechanics or quantum clocks or small sats or laser communications or, you know, some sort of IT security. You get the point. All right. So what you have to keep in mind is who's evaluating your proposal, what's their level of knowledge and understanding. So it's been really important for us to hit on what's the impact, why is this important, where do we think the technology could benefit the Air Force. Yeah, and don't get too technical. There's definitely a place in a section for it, but you don't want to get into the weeds too quickly. Talk about impact. Like if this is successful, like what are the impacts maybe you're already having in the commercial sector? Maybe you're doing some great stuff for cybersecurity of banks. Obviously, like that type of cybersecurity impact could be beneficial to the Air Force. So just keep in mind where your evaluators are coming from, their expertise, all those different factors. And finally, I mean, it's always good to get someone to review your proposal that's not familiar with your company or technology. And if they don't read those first couple paragraphs and get excited about the potential, the impact, what you could really do to benefit the Air Force, then go back and rewrite it. So that's my 2 cents, my recommendation. Okay, with that being said, Kevin, I think you want to be brought up, and let's run through some different questions.
Yeah, Russ, hey, thank you so much. So I want to highlight a couple of things quickly, just to make sure that we're communicating the right message as clearly as possible. So yeah, a lot of sections on a phase 1 proposal, really a lot of sections on a phase 2 proposal. And if I understood you correctly, what you're saying is keep your eye and keep your mind focused on the evaluation criteria and communicating the impact of the solution that you're going to have. Meet the pro forma technical requirements to be responsive to the solicitation. So if they ask for a volume, include the volume in there and include the very minimum requirements that the solicitation calls for. But to the extent that you can communicate through that volume, which someone may or may not actually read, things that touch the impact of your solution and the evaluation criteria, you should do so. Am I summarizing that correctly?
Yeah. So hit those mandatory sections and keep it in context of that evaluation criteria, which is kind of standing separately. So with that in mind, look at these sections a little bit differently. Make sure you're hitting on what they're actually evaluating you on, because it's easy to get sidetracked based on some of the sections, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've also seen, not so much in a phase 1, but definitely in a phase 2s, where they seem to be asking for the exact same information, multiple different places.
Yes.
Right. And I've heard that the reason why that's possible is because they tend to break up these solicitations. So how do you recommend that folks do that? I mean, if you communicated very clearly your value prop on the second slide, does that mean you don't touch that piece of information again?
No, honestly, sometimes we're a bit repetitive. We try and emphasize different information in those sections. So a lot of sections, like you said, or their slide template that's out there, like they kind of hit on some of the same factors. So you may be repeating pretty similar information in different sections, especially that slide, that pitch deck that you're putting in. But try and find a little bit different information or spell out the impact a little bit differently, but it will be a little bit similar.
Fair enough. All right, so let's get into some of the questions, and I'm going to take these out of order because I'm going to start simple, and we're going to build up to some of the more difficult questions.
Cool.
But question from Saif Abode, which is it okay to apply for several SBIR phase 1 grants from different agencies?
Yes, absolutely. So all you have to be aware of is you are not allowed to double dip. You can't get paid twice or even 3 times to do the same work. But where we run into pretty often with our clients is like the Army's using different systems, or maybe it applies to ground troops and tanks with the Army, or ships with the Navy, and aircraft or cyber systems with the Air Force or Space Force. So there's a lot of different customers, different changes you're going to have to make to your technology based on those end users. So don't propose the same exact work. I mean, you can, but you'll only be able to accept 1 award. But if you can make some changes in what you're going to be doing during the course of your phase 1, then you can apply to multiple agencies and win multiple awards.
Yeah, I would even argue that of an AFWERX, an AFX open topic phase 1 is inherently different from any other thing, because the phase 1 feasibility study really is just finding an Air Force customer and getting that Air Force customer to collaborate and agree with you on the Air Force use case, the operational testing and solution environment, and how you're going to try to integrate that with that customer. That is inherently separate because it's tied to the specific Air Force problem, the specific Air Force customer, and the process of coming to that. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So another question, which has to do with revenue, and specifically with revenue tied to an entity. So you mentioned commercialization potential, and a record or a history of demonstrated commercialization is a strong indicator to the evaluators. We see this a lot of different times in a lot of different ways. One way will be where a product or a proof of concept comes out of a university, and it's being spun out specifically to start this company, but it doesn't have, even though it has a ton of success, it doesn't have maybe customer revenue and traction behind it. Another one is where you'll have a company and it'll be, sometimes it's an overseas company, sometimes it's a big company spinning out a smaller solution, or a government business unit or something to that effect. But it's the exact same product, it's the exact same applications and use cases, but again, this is a brand new company that doesn't have demonstrated revenue against that, EIN, against that cage code. How do you advise companies to deal with that in their proposals?
Yeah, so if it's coming out of a university, for example, you don't have sales and revenues to really show, or investment to show commercial traction yet, I would recommend what Matthew Scott talked about, the STTR program, partnering up with the university. That seems to be a bit more friendly to earlier stage technologies than the SBIR program itself. If you're a company, let's say you're spinning off a new product line, the way we can work around that is you basically talk about company revenues and other commercial success and how you're going to leverage that with this specific product line. So you're kind of tying it together a little bit. You want to show that you're already very successful, or have a lot of traction commercially, but hey, here's a solution. Maybe it's tailored specifically to some DoD problem, and that seems to be a way to gain traction or have success in your phase one proposal.
Fantastic. So I hope that answered Cynthia's question. So the next question really is about the TACTFI and the follow-on from phase two options, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I have a question about what is the real difference, if any, between a TACTFI and a sequential phase two?
Honestly, so I've been out the last couple of weeks on paternity leave, and I feel like the details for TACTFI have just recently started to come out, so I don't have a solid answer on that. It could be, AFWERX rebranding of the sequential. It could, one of two things. So, okay. Historically, like we talked about the matching program, winding back the clock before that, or even other agencies still do this, is what's called an enhancement. So I get my phase two for $750,000. I can do investment matching. I can get customer to bring money. And there was a matching program that already existed within the SBIR program. It was just after you got your phase two award. So my guess is that TACTFI is maybe that flavor, or it's this separate sequential piece where you just get this second phase two award. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's been kind of the thing with AFWERX since they rolled out the open topic in, I believe, the 2018 FY SBIR cycles. Mm-hmm. They've changed it. They haven't changed it every cycle, but they've changed it almost every cycle. Yeah. So frequently we don't know, but I think it's pretty good. I like what you said earlier, which is even though the matching program and the rapid enhancements are specifically sort of deceased, if you will, the concept that they represented, which is strong commercialization potential and customer demand, commercialization potential being demonstrated by venture capital raise, customer pre-orders or purchase orders, or existing orders on that product, and then the customer demand signal being the program customer that's putting their own money into the project as well. Like, those concepts remain valid, and to the extent that your project needs more money, there are other ways to increase the value of that SBIR phase two, either through a TACTFI or a sequential funding. And again, those two kind of core things, which is the commercialization potential and the customer demand signal, are going to be really important to that process.
Yeah. And real quick, before I forget, Kevin, I wanted to go back to one of the earlier questions. You can only do one submission. That's the current policy. Only one submission under the open topic. Well, let me rephrase. You can submit multiple, but they will only award one phase one each round. So that's just something to keep in mind. So yes, you can go to multiple agencies, submit multiple phase ones. Again, if we talk about that different scope, But with AFWERX and this open topic specifically, my recommendation is just to put in one really strong proposal.
Fair enough. And so 2 applications, which I thought you were going to get to this question. There was a question about if you already have an Air Force Phase 2 and are interested in sequential or TACTFI, is there a specific solicitation that comes out for those, or is that kind of an ad hoc application process? How's the application work?
Great question. We don't know yet. For StratFi, last year that was a separate solicitation, separate process. It was actually like 3 different tiers. It was like a quick white paper, and then it was a longer like 10, 15 page proposal, and then it was a legit like 50 page, very thorough submission, because again, we're talking about very high award amounts. So I would expect for the specific programs like TACFI and StratFi to have a solicitation. For sequential, maybe not. And I would really try and work with your Air Force customer and end user if they're interested in continuing to work with you, and then going back and having those SBIR conversations with AFWERX to see how they want to approach that, or if they are even open to doing that. The other thing I didn't mention is like you can always jump to different agencies potentially for Phase 2 as well. So that's a whole different can of worms.
Yeah, actually, if we have time at the end, I would like to get into a little bit of like what does the open mean in open topic. But we got a couple of pretty easy quick questions. So Line Dance says, hey, are demo videos allowed in the slide deck? And so let's broaden that question a little bit. How far do you want to deviate from the instructions in the solicitation?
Yeah, I wouldn't deviate. So they've said, again, specific formats. They have templates out there with the general formatting that they want to see, because they're looking at thousands at this point, thousands of proposals. So if you deviate, they're going to be able to go to certain slides to see certain information, and they know where it's at. And if you deviate and have different section headers, have different stuff in different locations, it's going to be harder for your evaluators to quickly assess your proposal. Number 1. 2, demo videos, no, they won't watch it. They won't look at it. They're probably going to print it off in black and white and really crappy, grainy printers. We had truly awful resources when I was active duty. And I just lost my train of thought. No. Oh, what I was going to say is for Phase 2, however, they have historically asked for a 100-second video. However, for the most recent 20.1 round, which are now like turning in their Phase 2 proposals, they've been through that cycle of Phase 1, now putting in for Phase 2. They said 100-second videos are not required, but maybe still include them. I think they're doing a legal dance there, if I had to guess. So later for Phase 2, video has been pretty important historically.
Yeah. A lot of companies are, so, I mean, just thinking about what you've been saying over the last, 45, 50 minutes, and knowing a lot of companies pay production companies. In fact, I think many of your clients pay production companies to produce these videos for them because they've been so important. However, if they make the videos not actually a requirement and the evaluation procedures are very like sort of scripted in terms of how they break it out and whatever, it seems likely that would be, there wouldn't be a team charged with looking at a video if the video is not a requirement. So people could actually be wasting their money.
So my recommendation is still, it's been the 100-second video for Phase 2 has been really important. So for our clients, we've said like, I would still do it on the chance that they look at it. It's a great way for them to get a very quick understanding of the quality of your company and technology.
And it's still a great tool to demonstrate the application and use case of their product. So question about U.S. Ownership of companies, citizenship of founder teams, and those kinds of things. So what are the hard and fast rules, and where are they squishy?
Green card counts. We've run into that a couple times. Our founders move over, they're waiting to get their green card. So that once you have your green card, that does qualify you as a U.S. citizen. where it gets really weird. So say that you have one VC investor and they invest in you and they own more than 50% of your company, but they have less than 500 employees, you're still qualified. However, if you have multiple VCs and those VCs together own more than 50%, that's where it gets kind of gray. I don't think that you're eligible in that circumstance. But if you have a bunch of different, a couple founders and maybe like some friends and family or a different small business that has like some ownership, if that is pushed over 50% with those individuals that are U.S. citizens or those small U.S. companies, then you're qualified. So hopefully that helped a little bit more, Kevin.
So specific scenario, company with two co-founders, each have 50% ownership. One's a citizen, one's not. Eligible or not?
They each have 50-50? Great question. I'd have to go back and look at the statute specifically. I don't know if it's 50 or 51%.
Okay.
So you'd have to take a closer look on that case. Worst case scenario, and I know this sucks, but give the U.S. citizen founder the 1% more to have the 51% ownership. I know that gives up control. That's a whole different can of worms, but that would make you eligible for these programs.
Fantastic. Great answer. Thank you very much. So real quick, do you know or have you heard whether there'll be a direct phase 2 for the 20.3 cycle?
Every indication is yes. So
okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. So one more question then, because that one was easy.
Yeah.
Tell me about the open in the open topic.
Great.
Right. So if I've got a phase 1, I'm going out looking for a phase 2 Air Force customer. But this is technically an open topic, and somewhere down the road on StratFi, I could be working with a bunch of different partners. But what should I be doing? Should I be looking for an Army customer? Should I be submitting 2? What's your advice on how does it work? What does the open, or what does the joint mean? Rather, I keep saying open. What does the joint mean in the joint?
Joint.
Topic?
Okay. Well, let's say
and what should I be doing?
Joint. So open. What that means is the Air Force, the rest of the DoD is still practicing this for the most part. They have very, very specific topics that have been written around a specific program, specific problem that be tied to F-35 or hypersonic cruise missiles, whatever. So very, very specific, and they have assigned a technical point of contact. The Air Force said, we'll get rid of that. We will now have just wide open. So you tell us, what do you have?
Yeah.
How can it help us? Joint.
Yeah, I misspoke. I really meant to say joint, not open.
Yeah, let's jump into joint. So joint, they are making some effort to, tie in these other partners. I think it was NGA had a little bit of funding that they put towards a handful of phase 2s. But for other agencies, like they had this topic with Army and Navy. And then I think it may have been a surprise to some of these other branches that they were supposed to foot the bill for the phase 2. So we haven't seen a ton of traction in that yet. Again, most of this joint stuff came out with 20.1, so we're in the process of putting in those phase 2s, so we'll see how that shakes out. But all that to say is having, letters of support, so maybe not the MOU, have the MOU signed by your main Air Force customer, because this is Air Force funding, but have some letters of support, even some milestones or some ways that you're going to be working with the Army or NGA or other customers. That shows, again, a broader potential adoption. If other customers are putting up funding, that makes you less risky to the Air Force and their investment. So it's a good thing, but they should not, in my opinion, be the main focus yet. Something definitely to pay attention to, Kevin, in future rounds. Maybe the Army will come out and say, hey, we're going to do 10 phase 2 awards under this AFWERX program. Or have some sort of funding or team dedicated to working with through the Air Force with this program.
Awesome. So would it be safe to say then that if you found an Army or a Navy customer that is interested in a parallel application or use case for this, they wanted to kick in $100K and you spell out specifically while we're doing this work for the Air Force, we're going to take the product of this and we're going to go meet with Army customers, test it on some of their data, maybe as an example, integrate it onto, you know, whatever cloud platform that the ECMO is going to put together. They're paying for it. Here are the milestones associated with it. It's parallel work. It doesn't impact your ability to get the Air Force. In fact, it might make it more attractive to the Air Force because they're getting additional funding and additional, I guess, buy down on the risk. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, so a couple scenarios I'd suggest. So if they're funding it, maybe just go and try and execute a phase 3 sole source contract with them very quickly. And again, you can talk about that in your proposal in your phase 2, and that'll strengthen your proposal. If they didn't have money, I think you could carve off a milestone that's specifically where you're going and talking to Navy or Army. But again, they shouldn't be the main focus. The Air Force should be the main focus. So a couple different ways that you can execute that.
Fantastic. Well, Russell, that's the end of our time. I wanted to say thank you so much for coming, especially given that I know you've pulled back a little bit over the last few weeks with that new baby.
Yeah.
And thanks for making time for this Defense Academy audience to hear from you, learn more about the SBIR open topic. Everyone on the line, you are going to get an email later today that's going to have a copy of Russ's government registrations handbook, which he generously does not lock into his website, but he lets everybody look at that. It's the best resource step by step that I've seen for how to register for all those different systems that you would need to go through to register specifically for an SBIR using the DSIP portal. However, the steps up to that DSIP section are good if you want to get a contract under XTech, or if you want to go after an OTA for DIU or any other government contracting opportunity. So thanks for letting us use that. Those of you who have not, if you're watching this and you think you want to go against XTech 6.0 or you want to go against the 20.3 SBIR cycle and you do not have a cage code, you need to open that email. You need to open up Russ's manual on government registrations, and you need to start that process tomorrow to make sure that by the time the submission window closes on October 22nd, you have, in fact, a cage code that you can display prominently in the header of all of your slides. So that's the last thing I'll say. Thank you, Russ. And we're on about an 8-minute break. We'll kick back off at 13:10 Central Time for us military types for a Capital Factory overview. Hello, Defense Academy Day One audience, and welcome back. Let me see. It looks like we still have over 80 folks on, so thank you for staying with us this long. The next 20 minutes or so, we're going to give you a quick overview on Capital Factory and the Center for Defense Innovation, and then I'll open it up for questions. So with that, Brian, please play the intro video.
Howdy, my name is Joshua Baer, and I'm the founder and CEO of Capital Factory. Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas, the #1 state for startups in the US. Thousands of entrepreneurs, programmers, and designers gather day and night, in person and online, for meetups, classes, and co-working. With boots on the ground in Austin, Dallas, and Houston, we meet the best entrepreneurs in Texas and introduce them to their first investors, employees, mentors, and customers. Capital Factory has invested in more than 300 Texas startups over the past decade. Whether physically in person or virtually online, Capital Factory is buzzing with energy and activity every day. Start with all the geekiest events on meetup.com and sprinkle in out-of-town guests, book signings, hackathons, innovation conferences, and pitch events. We're talking about thousands of participants every month. Most of the events are free, open to the public, and streamed over the internet. Capital Factory is all about community. Everyone's here to meet other people who can help them on their journey or to help others find their way. We kick off every morning with a text-based Ask Me Anything session with a mentor or investor in our Slack channel. Anyone in our community can ask questions in real time, and everyone else can see the answers. These are some of the most active investors and the most successful entrepreneurs in Texas. Those same mentors and investors do regular office hours where they volunteer a few hours a month. It's easy for any of our community members to find people with specific interests or expertise and to book a 30-minute meeting with them. With hundreds of mentors and investors in the network, there are dozens of meetings happening every day. Our co-working space provides desks, offices, conference rooms, classrooms, a podcast room, a video conferencing booths, and more. But the most important spot is the kitchen, because that's where everybody comes together. That's the real reason everyone's here, to meet each other. And every day at Capital Factory is demo day. Maybe it's the local angel investor network or a venture capitalist from out of town. Maybe it's one of the Fortune 500 scouts looking for new tech or a state or federal government official. It's delegations from other countries, school kids, army generals, and celebrities. We've helped entrepreneurs get in front of Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, and even President Obama. How do we know who to put in front of the president? Well, first, they go through an intensive interview and assessment process where they're vetted by our staff and our mentor network. We categorize them by industry and technology and score them based on traction and potential. Then, they have to work their way up to the top. On the way, they'll often meet with members of our Innovation Council of Fortune 500 scouts looking for startups with technology that can give the big companies a competitive advantage. They're hanging out in the kitchen of the co-working space and in our Slack channels online. They partner with startups to go after big government contracts with the Army Futures Command, Air Force Ventures, and the Texas Military Department. The money is flowing. In the past year, 30 startups in our community received more than $60 million in non-dilutive funding through government programs. Capital Factory is also the official Google Tech Hub for Texas. Google plugs us into a global network of other entrepreneurial communities and creates unique opportunities to help our startups attract investors, increase diversities, and access Google services. All of this activity creates exclusive deal flow and data for our investment fund. Our goal is to invest in the best deals in Texas, no matter who leads them. Over the past 10 years, we've secured $110 million in pro rata, super pro rata, and follow-on rights in more than 600 companies. We watch them all interact with our mentors, investors, Innovation Council, and each other, so we know which ones to invest in. Some of our most successful companies include Aceable, Coder, Data.World, Icon, Sensei, Storable, and WP Engine. Are you ready to quit your job and become an entrepreneur? Do you know someone who is? That's who I want to meet. And those are the kind of people who I can introduce you to. You can message me directly on Twitter @Joshua Baer or email me at josh@quityourjob.com.
All right, thanks, Brian. So this is a program that we do once a month called kind of an intro to defense innovation and AMA. AMA being Ask Me Anything about Capital Factory and the defense innovation ecosystem. So you just heard Josh talk about all the different support that we give a bunch of different companies. And I'm going to give you some really quick down and dirty overview of some of this stuff in the next few charts. But in addition to all of those things that he talked about, we have done for our companies or are in the process of helping our companies do. One thing that's not in there, a fact that I'm super proud of, is you heard Matthew Scott from AFWERX and you heard Russ Long from Long Capture talk about the StratFi program, which is a program whereby after you win a SBIR phase 2, you can apply for essentially a subsequent phase 2 award that at a minimum is $6 million in government funding, which would be a split between SBIR and program funding. And 21 companies have been awarded StratFi awards so far. Of those 21 companies, 3 are Capital Factory portfolio companies: Icon, Aerial Applications, and Python. Python being a company that's actually not even located in Austin; they're located in Boston. And another company, Ascentium, is located here in Austin, and is a company that we have a good relationship with, and that one of our partners, Texas Military Department, was very instrumental in pulling them forward. And that really is, I think, a great metric that describes what Capital Factory is all about. So we are the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas. All of that activity being fueled by more than 200,000 people that are getting together live and virtually in our space, either for co-working, for events, for South by Southwest, for Austin Startup Week, which is coming together next month. And that's really what's making it all happen. So we like to say that no one else is even trying to do what Capital Factory is doing because of the way that we do it. One, the Texas Startup Manifesto, which treats the entire state of Texas as a market. 2 is the physical center of gravity that merges all these different things that are relevant to startups and helping them grow quickly. It's the co-working, it's the events, it's the investor network, it's the mentor network, it's the big corporate layer that acts as sponsors and customers and brings in a lot of really interesting people. It's the VIP, it's now the government. And that's really the third thing, is it's that center of gravity for defense, which brings in Army Futures Command, the Army Applications Lab, AFWERX, the Defense Innovation Unit, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the Texas Military Department and their new Innovation Task Force, the TMDX. All of those things together in one building is truly unique for any co-working space, for any innovation cell, and for any military, particularly any military activity going on anywhere in the world. So the Texas Startup Manifesto, we like to treat the entire state of Texas as a single market, and we do it in 2 ways. If you are a startup in the state of Texas, particularly if you're a pre-A round startup in the state of Texas, and we haven't heard of you, we consider that to be a failure. Also, we believe that we can connect all of the startups in our portfolio to 3 things: talent, customers, and capital, without leaving the state of Texas. And in that way, we treat the entire Texas economy, which collectively is the 10th or 11th largest economy in the world, as a single marketplace for you. So Fortune 1000 company headquarters or major activities located in Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Texas, every industry you can possibly imagine. And that network of over 700 investors that through our investor relations team curated nearly 3,000 one-to-one meetings for our companies last year. One of the founding ideas of Capital Factory that Josh Baer and Gordon Doherty had whenever they started this was they didn't think that if you were a Texas-based startup, you should have to go all the way to Silicon Valley to raise venture capital when there's so much capital right here in Texas waiting to be deployed. And they have energized all of that money looking for you. So these are just a broad overview of a lot of the investors that we work with. And then the logos associated with our Innovation Council. Again, our Innovation Council, these companies come here because they're looking for an innovative culture or ecosystem. They're looking for specific, innovative, and cutting-edge technologies that they can either add to their products through some kind of a partnership agreement or a subcontract, or they can outright acquire. And they bring lots and lots and lots of great customers with them, specifically from the government. Many of the the partners represented by the logos that you've seen on there have brought so many different government agencies and program managers through our hallways. And when they do, we introduce them to our companies. So we do this again across the state of Texas through physical space at the Centrum in Dallas, at the coming soon at the Ion in Houston. We're currently at Station Houston downtown. When the Midtown Innovation District opens up in Houston in Q1 of next year, anchored by the new building, the Ion, which is being finished out now, we will be there soon. Also coming soon here in Austin, Texas, the Center for Autonomous Robotics. All three of these facilities being in addition to our flagship at 7th and Brazos in downtown Austin, Texas. So by the numbers, over 200,000 participants in 2018, over 200,000 square feet of space, thousands of mentors or members, hundreds of mentors. Our accelerator in 2018 onboarded over 90 companies, 120 companies last year. We were shooting for 150 companies this year. We had a little bit of a setback in April and May, as you can probably imagine, but we've actually surged back pretty strong since then, and we're looking for really strong numbers in 2020 for our accelerator. So the types of things that we do, particularly for our defense partners, because I know that's why you guys are all here today, shortly after the announcement, or shortly after the activation, rather, of Army Futures Command, Startup Week 2018, which was just a few weeks after the activation, we did a 3-day hackathon, 300 participants right here on the 5th floor of Capitol Factory, trying to find future drone technology for MD5, an organization that preceded what is now known as the National Security Innovation Network. We do a lot of 100K challenges. Specifically, our 100K challenges are tied to all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion summits, but some of those actually touch the defense market as well. We did one at Fed Supernova just a few weeks ago, one by Python Technologies out of Boston, Massachusetts. That one was in human performance technologies. The previous defense challenge that we did was in artificial intelligence, and we did one before that last June in AR/VR technologies. And anytime we do one of these challenges, we make it relevant to the specific defense customers that are using those technologies, and we always invite them to come, and they usually do. And those companies that participate in Capitol Factory has a strong commitment to diversity in the startups that we recruit, and the employees that we hire, and in the folks that we bring in and showcase in our events and on our stages. So one of the things that I mentioned previously about what's super unique about Capitol Factory are those VIP visitors in that VIP program. It's so much more than just a tour. We create an experience, and it actually started with President Obama back in 2013, but we create an experience that's unlike any other innovation space. And everybody in the city of Austin and even the state of Texas knows about it. So when President Obama came to Austin, because he knew that Austin was a startup town with a great technology culture, the Austin Chamber and the governor's office both recommended they come to Capitol Factory because we had created that experience for them. So what does that mean to you? That means that if you're one of our portfolio companies, you could have demoed your product to the President of the United States, or to Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, or to Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, or to Alexis Ohanian, the founder of Reddit. Every day is demo day through this VIP program. When big names in science and technology come to Austin, they come to Capitol Factory. And when they come to Capitol Factory, they see our companies. And it's not just Satya Nadella, it's every single week, it's VIPs from within the government and defense space. I'm not going to tell you exactly who, but we have some pretty heavy-hitting VIPs from within the Department of Defense, from within a specific agency in the Department of Defense coming through on Thursday. They're going to meet some Capitol Factory companies, but also Fortune 500 company executives that can be that first big customer, state and government officials, folks from foreign countries, and always, always, always investors from inside and outside the state. Our accelerator has worked so well that we've been asked by dozens of other accelerators to either white label or to partner with them to help them launch their accelerators. So the defense industry is a relative newcomer to Austin, Texas, but it all started back in 2016 with a decision by Ash Carter, who was then the Secretary of Defense, that the Department of Defense needed to access those companies that were being backed by venture capital so that they could take the Department of Defense's S&T budget and effectively magnify it by 10 times. That was the idea that resulted in the Defense Innovation Unit and the emphasis on the 2371B other transaction for prototyping agreement. But along with that, Defense Innovation Unit opened a cell inside Austin, inside Capital Factory, or I should say in Austin, inside Capital Factory back in 2016. Shortly after that came the Air Force, and this was on the heels of a visit by Lieutenant General Stephen Quast, who was then the director of Air Education and Training Command, that resulted in the Pilot Training Next program, which is now Pilot Training Transformation, which has also spawned a parallel program around aircraft maintenance. But it was that visit from General Quast and the ability, or the understanding of the ability to use emerging technology from a startup and build an entire program around it that could solve a huge problem for the Air Force, such as time to train, cost to train, and backlog to train pilots, is what resulted in AFWERX being located here in Austin at the Capital Factory. The Texas Military Department, and specifically TMDX and their Innovation Task Force, came next. Many of you who are listening to me right now probably have met a young man by the name of Major Alex Stoicky Goldberg, but Alex has, been the innovating and driving force behind TMDX, which is working so hard to connect Texas startups to things like the AFWERX or the AFVentures StratFi program. And then, of course, in 2018, July of 2018 specifically, it was announced that Army Futures Command was going to put their headquarters in downtown Austin, Texas. And associated with that was the opening of the Center for Defense Innovation, the Army Application Laboratory space, specifically on the 8th floor at Capital Factory, which happened in February of 2019. And really, it was South by Southwest 2019 that we consider to be kind of day zero of the Center for Defense Innovation. And what happened in that year following day zero? Well, $63 million awarded to 31 different Capital Factory companies in various DoD innovation grants and contracts. That's so much bigger than we ever could have imagined. But as we looked back on what it was, this program that you are attending right now, Defense Academy, was one of the things that we saw as critical to not only continuing, but really expanding that growth, including so many more companies and so many more millions of dollars. It's the awareness, the awareness, the information, and the relationships. The awareness is what you're getting today. It's understanding the XTech Search program, how it differs from what Army Applications Lab is doing, knowing what the application cycle is for the AFWERX SBIR 20.3 cycle, understanding how to get a cage code, and understanding the difference between AFWERX and some of these other programs. That awareness. And then the information on how to apply, what works good and what works well in a proposal, and then the things that you're going to get over the next few days, which is, tomorrow the graduate level stuff and how to work with primes, getting a phase 3, and then those specific topics, things that you need to understand in order to really succeed in a phase 2, like CMMC, intellectual property, foreign influence, ownership, and control. So it was delivering that information that we knew was key, and then the SBIR Accelerator program, which was the next program that we devised specifically to help companies succeed in a phase 1 SBIR and get the best phase 2 that they can get. We just completed our first SBIR cohort a few months ago. Those proposals are actually not even submitted yet because they're on this 20.1 phase 2 solicitation that's due on August 24th. So look forward to telling you about the success of that program. But if you want to apply for the next one, I'll tell you about that in just a second. So obviously times have changed since the onset of COVID-19. The global health crisis and pandemic that has closed all of our physical spaces and prevented us from coming together physically, like you see on the left, but we're coming together virtually on the right. And what you're seeing right there is the production of the AFWERX Spark Collider event back in March that was supposed to be a huge live event and turned into a huge virtual event, 3 days compressed into one, over 80 pitches, over $60 million, over $200 million awarded between StratFi and conventional phase 2s, and the Collider event all happening at the same time. It was super awesome. So you heard from Russ Long from Long Capture earlier today. So the SBIR Accelerator program, powered by Microsoft, partnered with Long Capture, is going to be opening up with the next SBIR cycle. So 17th through 20th right now, Capital Factory event, Defense Academy, that's what you're in right now. And next week, the SBIR 20.3 topic pre-release will happen. You'll have about 30 days to review and ask questions on those topics. And then starting on 23 September through 22 October is the submission window. That's when the DSIP portal will be open, where you can actually submit your submissions. And from the day that the topics are pre-announced until 3 days, actually 4 days after the topic submission window closes, you can apply for the Capital Factory SBIR Accelerator. That accelerator program is specifically designed to operate inside the phase 1 period of performance for the AFWERX open topic SBIR, and during that period of performance, provide you access to defense industry partners who can help you build the right product that's going to touch the right program, that's going to be funded, and that's going to integrate and help you scale it in that phase 3. It's going to connect you to investors so that you can secure that letter of intent, close that next investment round so that you can document that to show your commercialization potential when you submit your phase 2 proposal. And most importantly, it's going to connect you not only to a pool of Air Force customers, but also customers from the Army, the Navy, SOCOM, and plenty of other organizations as well. So applications will close on the 26th of October. During the second week of November, we will do an assessment. We'll put the dates out later. I think it might be November 14th, but don't quote me on that. We'll kick off with a kickoff summit the second week in November. We will do a series of what's basically a bunch of Epic Office Hours events between January and February of 2021. Those Epic Office Hours events, again, intended to connect you to the DoD customer, the industry partner, and the investor. And that's it. We are now in the AMA portion. I will go back and see if we have any questions. So, question from the crowd: does Capital Factory make investments or take equity in companies? That's a great question. And there's two answers to that. So the answer to both is yes, but we do it two different ways. Our accelerator is a effectively a value add services program, just like any accelerator. And we take 1% common class advisor equity from each company that joins our accelerator. There's no specific investment of capital associated with that. So unlike the Techstars model, where they give you a fixed investment of 120K, take 6% of your company and put you through a boot camp program, Capital Factory takes 1% advisor equity and gives you all of those services associated with our mentor and investor relations network. And we're going to make sure you're going to get seen by all the best VIPs, and that lasts for life. So short answer is yes, we do take 1% advisor equity for induction into or for assessment into our accelerator program, but we also have a venture capital fund. Specifically, we have 6 venture capital funds, and since 2013, Capital Factory has been the single most active early stage investor in the state of Texas, writing more checks per year than any other investor in that seed to A round stage. So the answer to both of those questions is yes. So not a whole lot of questions. What else do we have? Okay, well, no more questions. I will go ahead then and turn it over to Brian to close us out. I'll still be on if anybody has any last minute questions that they want to post. But Brian, take it away. Tell them what's happening tomorrow.
Hey everyone, Brian Hiddle here, Program Coordinator, Capital Factory. I hope you enjoyed the programming today. You will get a summary email with all of our speakers' info and their decks and their contact information. Also, we're going to send out that form again. I've sent it all to you via Eventbrite. We need you to fill that out, specifically if you represent a startup, just so we can send you a Sococo invite for our networking tomorrow after our programming. Tomorrow we will start at noon, and we have another full slate. Also in that email will be a full agenda from that you saw earlier in the deck today for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So again, thanks for coming. We'll see you tomorrow, and we're looking forward to the next couple days. And thanks to Kevin also.